Be sure to go over your social media.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming out. We are the Social Education Committee. My name is Jimmy, I'm the coordinator. And these are my associates. We have Mercedes, we have Alex, and we have Kevin, Dream Team. Today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and whether or not this is the beginning of the end or a new beginning. Now I'm just going to give a quick brief overview of what we're talking about here so you guys can just start thinking about it. We're defining artificial intelligence as a machine that is a rational agent that is able to take into account its environment and the situation and be able to make decisions that will give it the best chance of completing its task. And just to put this in like more applicable terms, it's used in search engines right now like Google. It's used in voice assistants like Siri on your phone, and I actually just got an update on my laptop last night on my Mac that I can now have Siri on my laptop. I don't know if mine's out of date, but that's been around for a while. But also self-driving cars. I'm sure you've heard about that in the news with Uber is thinking about going into completely self-driving cars, and that's something that Elon Musk is very heavily involved in. But I'm going to leave it at that and hand it off to Mercedes to go a little more in depth about the market behind it and what artificial intelligence really is.
So I know it's like kind of a common thing to be a little bit wary or intimidated by artificial intelligence, but I'm going to focus on some of the positive aspects of it. So to start off with, I want to discuss the concept of a new artificial workforce. Now this leads to an idea that artificial intelligence will help maximize existing human capital and also physical capital, therefore allowing workers to be more productive because routine and repetitive tasks will be given to robots, and then humans can focus on tasks that create more value in society. This leads to more economic innovation, more technology being developed, and also some large investments into AI. There's also a lot of significant social benefits. So I know Jimmy mentioned self-driving cars. And for us, that's all awesome. We could drive to work, read a book, take a nap, listen to some music, and it's very easy for us. But it also has social benefits to people that are like disabled, and they can't drive themselves to work or whatever the case is, and they rely on friends or family or public transportation. So that's one significant social benefit. And then there's this concept of machine learning. That refers to really advanced, complicated algorithms that allow machines to actually learn and improve their performance over time. So some examples of that are like an expert system. An expert system is software that can utilize huge knowledge databases and use that to solve problems that are conventionally solved by human experts, so like doctors and reading exams and stuff like that. You can get an algorithm to solve that for you. Another example is an autonomous robot. So that's something that doesn't need human direction in order to operate. So you might think of drones, or my favorite kind of an autonomous robot is actually, DJ Roomba, who can clean your entire house, and also jam out at the same time. There's also intelligent assistants like Siri, who takes in input from you and converts it to useful knowledge or information that makes your life significantly easier. The last one is an artificial neural network. I think this one's the most interesting. The concept is that we're trying to get computers to think more like humans. So if I write on the board, I love econ, econ is fun. All of us in this room can read it, understand it, agree, disagree with that statement. But how do you code a robot to read that, number one, and also process that? So artificial neural networks takes in information and applies more of like a human cognitive process to that. And we see that in things like voice recognition software, facial, or even image recognition software. So to look at some of the major industry players, there's a lot of players in AI right now, but some major ones are IBM, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and there's many more. There's also lots of startups that are driving technology changes right now. So here are some industries at the moment. Obviously, some really large ones are software, information technology, internet, but very shortly we'll see major improvements in industries that you might not expect, like financial services or marketing and advertising, even the healthcare. Okay. And just to take a look at growth projections of revenue growth projections. Right now, this graph is segmented in between different regions. Here we are right now, and in over less than 10 years, this is the projected growth, with the largest two being Asia and North America. So that's a pretty significant growth pattern. With all that being said, I'm going to pass this over to Alex, and he's going to talk a little bit about labor markets.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? So, I'm going to talk about the labor market. First of all, we'll talk about the next technological revolution. The first one being the Industrial Revolution. Now, when I say Industrial Revolution, what I want you guys to think about is the mechanization, automation of physical labor. So there's a little story I like to tell about this. It's a good metaphor. So there's two guys. One of them has a horse, and one of them has a car. The guy with the horse goes up to the guy with the car and says, you know, you look dumb. Your car looks dumb, and I don't like you. And the guy with the car is kind of like, you know, who are you? But anyway, so they decide to have a race. Eventually, the horse ends up winning, but the horse works so hard, it dies from exhaustion, which is sad. But the point of the story is that the car didn't get exhausted. The car could keep going, and the car kept developing. Now, think of the horse as the human brain and the car as AI. So, jobs today, AI tomorrow. First one, I want to look at this graph. On the right side, you see the probability of the job being automated, left side of the job. There's two things I want to focus on. The first one is that a lot of these jobs that are likely to be automated are middle-class, white-collar jobs, and that's not really a good thing. So the first one is accountants and auditors. So if there are any accountants in the room, you can see me after, we can talk. And the second thing is economists, and that's going to affect everybody in the Economics Association. And that is a 43% chance of being automated, of being changed to AI. So I hope, you know, keep it in mind. So what jobs are being automated? Why are some of these being automated? Why are some of them very safe? And that really comes down to one word, and that's routine. So if a job can be broken down into steps, into if-then sort of pattern, the computer can do it. So that's going to be something for routine cognitive, something like accounting, set rules, set steps. Routine manual, that's going to be something like bricklaying, or if you're building a roof. These things take patterns, these things are repetitive, and the computer can certainly let you do that. So non-routine cognitive, that's going to be something like consulting, where you're thinking creative business solutions, and non-routine manual, painting, something like that, artistic. So what's the future of jobs? A lot of economists are going to say something like this, which is, you know, calm down, relax, it's going to be all right, and you're going to get your job. So that's because, A, increased production is equal to increased demand, so that's going to create larger labor markets as items get cheaper. Next thing is emerging fields supporting AI. So that's going to be things like everybody's going to get a job as an IT person, or a mechanic, or a maintenance guy, or, you know, you're just going to hang around the office, do, I don't know, watch the computers. And the last thing is that there's going to be an increased demand for humans. So if 50% of the jobs in the company are given to AI, which are cheap and more effective, the other 50% of the company is going to grow exponentially. And those jobs are going to be given to humans. So that's going to be something that takes like empathy, or something that a computer can't replicate. And the next thing is, this is what historians and sociologists are saying. They're saying, don't look to the past. This isn't like any other revolution that we've seen before. This isn't at all like the Industrial Revolution. So, in the Industrial Revolution, it was really a switch from farms to factories. These were non-routine or routine manual jobs to routine jobs. And it took place over several decades. What we're seeing is a much faster change. And you can't expect somebody who's been laying bricks their whole life to just, you know, hey, can you go and, you know, develop it after me? It's going to be like, I can build a house. So that's really not working. And the next thing is that fewer people in emerging industries. So in industries that have emerged since the year 2000, these industries only make up 0.5% of the labor market. And now even if these industries grow to accommodate the labor force, it might not grow fast enough to offset the loss of jobs. So that could be horrible. The last thing is that these new companies have few employees. When Instagram was acquired by Facebook for $1 billion, they only had 13 employees. In that same year, Kodak went out of business, which had 125,000 employees. So, there's a real question of how many jobs are we going to lose? Are these middle-class jobs? Is this going to create a greater income inequality? And is this technological revolution really such a good thing? These are ethical questions that Kevin is going to answer.
So I'm going to be talking about the ethical dilemma. So Alex kind of talked about why this revolution is different from the ones that we've seen before, and that's basically because the spectrum of jobs is being affected on both sides. We're seeing loss in blue and white collar jobs. And within the next 2 decades, we're going to see about a 47% decrease in jobs, which is the largest decrease we've seen to date. And we want to ask the question of whether or not this is ethical. Are we willing to lose these jobs for the sake of economic growth? And this is a very polarized argument. There are many different people arguing both sides. You have people, supporting the side of the solo shocker ideology, which is the fact that long-term economic growth is not spurred by increased investments in capital. It's really the technological change that's driving long-term economic growth. And the job markets aren't just going to kick the labor force out and say, see you later, nerds. Like, it's going to reallocate those labor jobs, those people that we're seeing job loss with, into more productive places where they can be allocated efficiently. And then there are people on the other side of the spectrum saying, we're going to see 99% of jobs lost in the next 100 years because humans just aren't important in that world. And people like Gary Marcus, are kind of arguing this. And I just wanted to point out Han Solo, Robert Solo's long lost brother. And I just want to make a statement that Robert is the rock star. Another question we want to ask is whether or not government should intervene in this. Should government take a step towards regulating AI? Currently, there's very little regulation for several different reasons. One being that it's very difficult to define AI. You can consider Google Translate an AI system. It can really recognize almost any different language, but it doesn't understand the language. So just the fact that it can replicate languages without actually understanding what it's doing is on a level intelligent. And then there are other things on the other side, super advanced learning machines that can, machine learning algorithms that can actually code themselves to make themselves more efficient without the input of their developers. And this is going to require a global coordination because there are issues of diffuseness. So we want, we don't want the issue, something being illegal in the U.S. and something being legal in Singapore and having two people collaborate on a project. We want to, come together and say what is legal and what is not, so everything is clear. And we haven't seen this work in the past. We've seen, failure on the side of climate change and nuclear proliferation. So this is probably something we're not going to see within our lifetimes. And another issue that I wanted to bring up briefly is that this is a very rapidly growing field. It's a day-to-day basis. It's always changing. Today's big data is tomorrow's data, and the government's always going to be trying to catch up. Another issue, trust. Do we want to put our trust into AI systems? And specifically talking about two facets, being data mining and big data. We're going to see pros and cons of the utilization of both these factors. Specifically for pros, we're going to see cheaper, better quality goods and services, and also better safety provided by our governments, but we're going to see a very large infringement on our privacy. I'm sure most of you have your GPS services on your phones right now, and that's allowing Google and Facebook to track your location at any given point in time. So you're probably used to this, you don't really care. But those things are kind of, being stored for purposes, I don't know, good or bad, but it's not my job to say. But another issue that I found, I was reading some of the darker side of AI, and a author talked about how if you had the right software that could recognize any language and enough computing power, you could listen to any phone call going on, read any email in any given language, and you can compile that, and you can, if you're the government, use that to monitor your people, or, not so good of an entity, you can sell it to enemies, for money, so that's kind of an issue. And we want to, consider developers in this as well. We're putting a lot of trust in the developers because they're kind of shaping what the human race is going to look like in the next 100 years. And we want to make sure that they're super transparent on what they're doing with AIs, what their goals are, what their aspirations are for these AI systems. And lastly, one of the most talked about topics is the singularity, or the fact that AI can, whether or not will, is up for discussion, but take over the world, kill all the humans, and run the world on their own. And that's basically just them becoming self-aware and taking control of the water supply, poisoning it, getting nuclear launch codes, blowing us up. So a lot of different things there. And we kind of got a taste of this with Twitter earlier this year. Microsoft released an AI chatbot on Twitter, and within a day, the Twitter users made it extremely racist, and it wasn't great. So it was a minus for AI systems. So I want you guys to keep all of this in your minds while Jimmy kind of talks about the policy implications.
All right, so obviously there's a lot of policy fields that can be affected by artificial intelligence, but today we're going to look at education, how that will respond to artificial intelligence, how AI can actually help education respond to itself, and also welfare concerns if the large amounts of job loss actually occurs, or if and when. So let's look at education first. There's been a model of education over the last 100+ years since the Industrial Revolution that has been pretty much the same. Obviously, we've tweaked it throughout the years, but very specialized, creating efficient workers for factories and now middle-class jobs. But the specialization's been the main key. And we see here at Penn State, where a lot of us are econ majors. And we hope that in the next 40 years that we'd be able to stay in economics. But the way AIs can change the economy and technology, we don't really know if that's going to be the case. So education is going to have to respond to this and mold into a new form of education that focuses more on character skills. So just kind of what we talked about so far, what do you guys think are some character skills that might be needed in this new AI economy shaped by artificial intelligence? You just raise your hands.
I'll kill you.
You scratch like this. Nick?
Empathy or like feelings, like robots can't do that.
Yeah, definitely, exactly. Anyone else? Yeah, that's exactly. Empathy is like the big one. So in school, like education should focus more on things like empathy, creating students that are more curious. Like perseverance will be a big key. Just these types of things that AI can't really do on its own, and there'll be a new demand for the types of jobs like let's say therapists. There's always going to be humans for that because artificial intelligence just doesn't have the capability to act like a human to that extent. And then educators and economists both agree on this. So economists say yes, we need this. This is going to be where the demand is in the job, like the workforce. But educators say that we can actually teach these skills at a young age, especially. A lot of people might think your character skills are kind of inherent, you're kind of just born with them, and that's how you are. But especially like early childhood education, elementary school, it became more of a student-centered model, focusing more on like emotional intelligence rather than knowledge and standardized testing, stuff like that. It would be able to respond better to this people would be able to respond better in this new economy. So what about people like us that are in college or, I don't know, me, senior, getting ready to graduate? It's obviously too late for us for that, and also people that are already in the workforce. So there's a few different ways it can respond. One is nano degrees, which is something that firms have already started investing in, and they're doing more and more, which are degrees that you can get in about a year or two, even less sometimes, in, let's say, like data science or website programming. And it only costs about $200, and firms usually will help you if they have, pay for it if they have like those divisions in their company. But the whole idea is just that you'll be able to cheaply retool and be ready for the future if your job is something that might become automated by artificial intelligence. Now AI is actually able to help with some of this. Pearson, which is the biggest education software company in the world, developer in the world, is heavily invested in artificial intelligence and thinks that it'll play a big part in the future of education. They think it'll be able to identify skills and weaknesses that students have that teachers might not be able to catch on to right away. You got a classroom of 30 people, AI might know more about like certain weaknesses they have with knowledge, but then also just how they're interacting online or whatever. And you might think, well, does this mean that computer-based learning is the way of education in the future? Is that only going to be AI? And it does not seem like that would be anywhere in the near future or ever, because kind of like you would say therapists, teachers, you need that human-to-human contact, because AI is not going to be able to teach these students, you know, empathy and other traits that will be needed in this new workforce. However, it could be more of like a companion to teachers and maybe a tutor for the students, but then just an extra aid that teachers have down the road. Now we're going to switch gears just a little bit into welfare concerns. So obviously there's plenty of different ways people would say you respond to this job loss, you know, different ideologies, politics, whatever. But we're just going to look at universal basic income only because a lot of people in the tech field, this is what they're advocating for. And now universal basic income, you might have covered in classes, is exactly what it sounds like. Everyone in the country gets the same amount of money, whether you're employed, not employed, rich, poor, whatever it may be. The idea being that if this large amount of job loss happens all kind of at once, consumption won't decrease rapidly and send the economy kind of spiraling. But so it kind of sounds good on the surface, but when you really dig into it, it becomes very regressive in that poor people are usually better off under their old welfare systems because it's very hard to pinpoint exactly how much money someone needs to get by. And rich people don't need that money to begin with. And if you start means testing, it becomes way too costly and when it's supposed to be a low administrative cost system. So what a lot of people actually advocate once you start bring up those points, is something called a flex security system, and it's kind of been implemented a little bit in Denmark, based off what I read, and it has to do with making it easy for firms to hire and fire people, and they'd be able to do so because the government would take on unemployment costs, obviously like universal basic income during that if you're unemployed, but also pensions, benefits, and health care. Obviously it's very costly, and you're not really sure if it'll work in the future, but that's the idea right now, is that then people will be able to move throughout this new economy, and if artificial intelligence is now in one sector, they can quickly and easily move to other firms without those firms having to take on a whole bunch of costs. So keep that all in mind. Now that we've gone over kind of like the different markets, like job market, business market, and also ethical dilemmas and policy, we're gonna break up into groups to do some discussion questions. So we're just gonna try to break it off. We're not gonna do any counting off. We're just gonna do it by section. So if kind of everyone right here in these rows before you get to the back, we'll kind of congregate over here. Everyone back there, just stay in that corner. Right here, like these first two rows can go right here.